Hi there, this is Linda and welcome back to my channel, or welcome if you're new here. Today I'm going to take you through my organization system for how I catalog and organize all of my clear stamps, from cataloging them and how I store them and how I keep track of all of these and manage all of the new stamps coming into my house. And I'm also able to use them in my projects. So let's go ahead and dive right in. Okay, welcome to my messy craft space. I wanted to share with you guys before we get into the top down how I have my stamps organized in terms of where I store them. So one of my goals is to have my stamps all accessible, but also room to grow, because I know realistically I'm going to get more stamps. Stamps are tough because you don't use them up. So unlike other products, they're just coming in and they're not going out. So I think that I've created a system that has room to grow for the next couple of years at least. And from there, I might need to reevaluate maybe cutting out some of the stamps in my stash. So I have over here these organizers. These are from Stamp and Storage. They were not initially intended for stamps. They do have something similar, but these have been discontinued. I will link in the description box below everything that I can find, or the closest one. So I have this organizer here, and then up here I have more of those same organizers. So you can see they were actually designed for Project Life cards. Up until just a few days ago, I had some stamps here in here with my Project Life cards, but I wanted to get all of my Project Life cards in here and not have any stash that didn't fit here. So I moved the stamps out of there and needed to revise my system. So over here, I have most of my 4x6 stamps. These here are alphas and numbers. These are like basic sets and other manufacturers. This is Ali Edwards. All of those are my story stamps. They will fill this when it's completed, but some of them are still in the process of being worked into my catalog system. Up here, I have 6x8s, and then I have this organizer here with 6x8s. These are all alphas. So I am obsessed with alpha stamps. I use alphas. 90% of my stamping is alpha. So I have pretty much all of the alphas are awesome stamps from Ali Edwards. And so these are all alpha stamps. It has a little bit of room to grow, but not a ton. Up here, I have my 3x4 alphas and a couple of the other most used ones. So I have space to grow in there. And then I have some more 3x4s over here. These are like Ali Edwards. I think these are just like all of my Ali Edwards ones. So there's also room to grow in here. On top of my desk, I also have this. I've pulled this one out to share with you guys, but it normally goes back in one of these cubbies. I'll just swing you around over there, right up there, so that everything is on my desk, but can kind of be put away. So these are 4x6 stamps from a few different manufacturers that I tend to not pick anything else up from. Future Craft is no longer in business. Felicity Jane is no longer in business. Studio Calico, I don't think they even make 4x6 stamps anymore. I'm not sure, but I don't really purchase from them anymore. And Kelly Perky is no longer in business. I also have a few Carrie Bradford back here, but I don't usually purchase from her. So this one I'm imagining is not going to grow that much. This organizer can only fit 4x6 stamps that don't have the sleeves. So like these ones are in these protective sleeves. So these ones are stamps that I don't necessarily use as often, and I'm okay putting them away, but I do know where to find them when I use my catalog system. So because I have a stamp catalog system, I'm okay with these stamps being not super easy to find. As long as they're in a good order, I use the catalog system to pull which stamp I want, and I will share a little bit more of that after the look at where I store my stamps. The next update that I have from when I used to have these all on my desk is in these Alex drawers. I have a lot of embellishments in all of these drawers, but down here, I have stamps. So I have some of these trays. I've got 4 of these trays, and these match those ones that are just smaller. And these have my 3x4 stamps in them, or most of my 3x4 stamps. And these have a lot of room to grow. So I have 2 of them are the Stories by the Month stamps. One of them is Studio Calico, and then one of them is Kelly Perky and Cocoa Daisy. So I do have these down in here. Again, I will just know where they are. I haven't made dividers for them, but I'm thinking about maybe doing that. And that will be something where I can pull some stamps from if I find them in my catalog and I want to grab one. Over here, I have just a few that are an odd size, but they are cataloged like that. I have a couple in the back there that are like duplicates that I purchased because I absolutely love the stamp. So that's just a few random ones back there. And then you can see I have non-stamping stuff in the back there. So the way I have these organized, I can pretty much reach every single stamp I own from my desk. I just need to use my catalog system to know which stamp I want. So let's move to the top-down approach and I will share my catalogs with you. Okay, so we're back at my desk for this top-down view because I wanted to share with you guys kind of how this system works. So you saw how I store my stamps, but not how I catalog them. And I think that having a lot of stamps, as you can tell, I have a lot of stamps, I would not be able to use them and they would just be sitting there in my stash and, you know, taking up space and not actually being used in my crafting. So part of this system is to intentionally use my stamps. I also catalog them because that way I'm able to see kind of what I have and it stops me from buying more stamps than I need. You can see I do have a lot, and part of that is because I am on creative teams, so I get stamps sent to me. But at this point, I very rarely purchase stamps because I just have so many. So it's hard to find a stamp set that I like, that I will use, and that I don't already have something that would take that place. Before purchasing a stamp set, though, I am going to come and look in my stamp organization binder and make sure I don't already have a stamp that meets those needs. Okay, so my binder starts with an overview index, and this is kind of the overview of all of the categories I have. So the main point of these is to catalog all of my stamps so that I know what I have and I can locate that stamp in my stash to use it. So these are all of the categories that I've come up with, and I have them divided into binder 1, binder 2. This is binder 1, this is binder 2. I could see eventually maybe needing to expand to binder 3. I have had to redo this list a few times throughout the years. I started my stamp organization system, I want to say maybe in 2017 or 2018. And I do have an older YouTube video showing you kind of what the system looked like at a point in time, I want to say maybe 5 years ago. And I felt like it was time to share an update and see how this system has evolved and grown through the years. So if you are just starting out and you want to do this, I would recommend picking maybe 5 categories to start with, things that you're constantly reaching for or looking for in your stash. Alphas and numbers are great ones to do. If you want to do a catalog, you don't necessarily need to catalog everything. You don't need as many categories as I have. You could definitely do only a few categories for things that you constantly reach for or constantly searching for. And every single stamp you own does not need to be in the catalog system. This is not something where I go through and just stamp all of these stamps and then figure out where they go. Instead, I go through my catalog and I figure out, does this stamp fit this category? If so, I stamp it. So these are the categories that I currently have. I will continue to add categories throughout however long I continue doing this and collecting stamps. As I am crafting, if a category comes up in my mind and I think, oh, you know, I'm looking for a stamp for a specific need and I don't have a category that fits that, that would kind of be a sign to me that I need to create a new category. After the categories, I have my index of stamps. So these are organized by 4x6, 3x4, and 6x8. And how I have these organized in here is I have given each stamp a name and a number. The name is the a few letters. That is usually the manufacturer, except for like alpha stamps or basic stamps. I've put those ones together. So these, for example, are both Ali Edwards stamps, so they are AE. We have stamps AE 28 and 31 here. To label these, I just type these on my typewriter, but you can type them on a computer and cut them out, and then I adhere them to the back of the stamp with clear tape. I do that right here in this corner because then when I store them, I can easily see that those corners when I flip through, and I will keep them organized in order. So all of the Ali Edwards ones, I have 1 through 31 will be in order. The 4x6 stamps are all like this. The 3x4 stamps all have a $ in front of whatever label I have given them, and that tells me that it is a 3x4 stamp that I'm looking for. The 6x8 stamps all have an exclamation point in front of them, and that tells me I'm looking for a 6x8 stamp. Right now, what I'm doing is working on putting this set of stamps right here into my catalog system. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to pull them out on my desk, and I pretty much just go through every single stamp when looking at each category, and I stamp the ones that match the category. So just to kind of give you an idea of how this looks before I start organizing some and putting them into my catalog, we have active is the very first category in here. And so each stamp on here fits this category. So we have like today's walk. And I have right here EE01. Now I know there's no symbol, no $ or exclamation point, so I'm looking for a 4x6 stamp. This is EE, which I know stands for Everyday Explorers, but if I didn't know that, you could go back up here and you could find that on the 4x6 here, Everyday Explorers. And EE01 is right there, which is the first one of my Everyday Explorers stamps. I would then go to my stash and pull out EE01 if I wanted to use that stamp, and it would be right there. I've already gone through a few of these, so like we've got active, and we have alphas and animals, arrows, so you can just kind of see how these go. I add additional pages for each category as needed. Originally I was stamping on the backs, but I realized I don't like that look, so I don't do that. So once one fills up, I just go to the next page like this. So these are all the ones that are arrows. So if I'm looking for an arrow, I would flip to this page. For some of these, like alphas, I'm not going to stamp the entire alphabet. What I've been doing is just stamping the letter A. For numbers, I stamp the number 9. For certain other ones, I've done that. So like days of the week, I just stamp the Monday. I know there's going to be a full set if I flip to that stamp set. So as I'm cataloging, I am to here with this set. I just keep a sticky note in here to tell me where I've left off. And I will just kind of work on this while I watch TV. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put you guys on a combination of voiceover and music sped up and work on adding these to my stash. I'm probably going to do this for maybe about an hour. It will not be an hour of video time because I will speed it up, but we'll see how long I feel like doing it. Essentially, I work on this while watching TV. When I'm feeling like spending some time in my craft room, but I'm a little tired, maybe not feeling like being creative, this is a good way to kind of spend my time. And it also kind of refreshes in my mind what are the stamps that I have. And I'm able to kind of look at the stamps as I go and kind of will remember a little bit better what I have. One thing I want to point out before starting though is just the idea that this kind of shows me what I have. So let's go to the section today, which is in binder 2. And these are in alphabetical order. So let's see. Let's find today. Here's today. Okay, so if I was looking at a stamp set to purchase and it had a really beautiful word today on it, I would flip here and say, okay, I have all of these stamps that say today. Do I actually need to purchase this stamp set? I would have forgotten. I have this today in a heart. I have today here. I have this today, which is going to end up on here once I get to cataloging that stamp. I have these big todays. I have some today that have prompts or other words around them. So I would kind of tell myself, I don't really need to buy another stamp that says today, but maybe it's the greatest one of all time. At least then I can compare it to what I have and make sure that it's not too duplicative. Okay, so I'm gonna go ahead and put you guys on the music. Like I said, I will pop in and out with voiceover as I have details to share, and then I will pop back on towards the end and give you a look at what I've done and a little bit more of a wrap up. Okay, so you've seen me go through a couple categories so far with this stash of stamps, but you can kind of see what my process is here. So essentially what I do is I pull one of the sets of my catalog out of my binder, and I just mark with a sticky note where I am in the process of cataloging my current set of stamps. And then I'm going to look through each stamp set one by one, and if it has any sentiments or images or anything that match the theme that I'm collecting, I will stamp it out using black StazOn ink, and then with my pen, I will write down in the top left corner of the stamp which set that stamp belongs to so I can find it again. If you're wondering how I decide whether or not something matches that category, I keep in mind this is a catalog of stamps for my use. So I'm thinking, okay, if I'm looking at this category, what is the type of sentiment that I'm looking for? And then I will stamp it if I feel like it matches that enough. So with this set of stamps that I'm currently working into my stash, I'm somewhat early in the process, so I'm close to the beginning of the alphabet, but I started with best and favorite. I moved on to brave, which I also have written down courage, strong, and tough. And now I'm working through celebrate, which I also have written down yay, party, cheer, surprise, because those are words that I want to also include on this set of my catalog. I will sometimes expand categories to add an additional word if, as I'm going through things, I think, okay, that's what I'm going to be thinking about when I'm going to this category. So like the celebrate one, that probably started as just like celebrate, yay. But then when the surprise story stamp came out, I had all of these ones that said surprise, and rather than creating a whole new category, I thought, you know what, that goes in really well with celebrate, because if I'm looking for the word surprise, I'm going to think celebration. And that's just how it works for me. If you think about those words, you might have a different association and you might want it to be a separate category. You might want to associate it with something else. This is just how it works for me for my catalog system, because I'm the one that's going to be using this. Another thing to keep in mind is, because I'm the one using this, I'm not necessarily going to be super strict about what goes where. So for example, this set that I'm currently working on, it looks like let's see, what is this? Change, transition, before and after. Now there might be a stamp set that says, the change of the season. And it looks like I already moved on to the next one. So I'm working through cleaning, chores, errands, shopping, craft, create, scrapbook, make. Yeah, so I'm going quickly on this screen because this is at 8 times speed. But anyways, as I was saying, so for example, the change category, maybe there's a stamp that says the changing of the seasons. Technically, that fits change, but I might decide I'm not going to want to put it in that category, because when I'm scrapbooking, if I wanted a stamp that says changing of the seasons, I'm probably going to look at my season category, not my change category. But you might think, okay, well, I'm thinking about the transition or the change of the season, so maybe I'm going to use a more generic stamp that just says change. And so you might want to put it there. And you can always stamp the same stamp in multiple sections. So there's no rule that says you have to do it one way or the other. Like I said, this is just for my own personal use, and some of the things I'm doing might not make a ton of sense to you, but that's okay. If you want to create your own, you can do it however works best for you, and I'm sure it would not look the same as mine. So this stamp set here is from Everyday Explorers, and it has a ton of journal ones. So on this craft category, I basically had to stamp every single stamp on that set. You could, if you're working through something like this, you could just stamp one of them and then make a note to say like, hey, I have this stamp set that has all of these journals and things. So if I'm looking for something journal, maybe I want to just pull out that entire stamp set. I personally don't want to do that because I like seeing it all on the page, but that would be a quicker way to catalog your stamps. I do use shorthand for certain things. For example, for days of the week, when I get to that, I just stamp out Monday. And that lets me know that there's a stamp for every day of the week. I don't need to see all of them. The same goes for alphas. I just stamp out the letter A. Numbers, I stamp the number 9. I just pick one, and that's just kind of the way I do it, because then I can see what the font looks like without having to stamping the whole alphabet doesn't make a ton of sense, because otherwise you might as well just look at the full stamp set. But having just the letter A, you're going to see all of those A's on the same page side by side, and it might be a little bit easier to select which ones you're going to want for your project. Okay, I just wanted to share you a couple more things from my craft room, just to show you kind of my entire system now that you've seen how it works. So up here, these are my stamp binders, and this is where my catalog lives. I could see possibly needing to get a third one at some point because I just have a lot of stamps. This here has my ink swatches, and it has the smaller little 2x3 stamps in it that I used to get from Studio Calico a long time ago. I have not been adding to that collection. I do need to catalog those. I have not, but I'm working through my backstash of stamps. Moving over here, I just want to share with you guys that part of keeping the system manageable is having a process in place when I get new stamps. So I have this basket that stays on my desk, and these are the newest stamps that I have that are labeled, and I'm currently working through cataloging them. So this is what you saw me working on in terms of putting through my catalog system. Then down here, I have the top drawer. In this Alex has my newest stamps. So any new stamps that come into my collection come into here. I also have some like older ones that just have not been cataloged because they need to be worked in. Right now it's my Christmas ones because those were previously with my December daily supplies, and I want all of my stamps in the same organization system. So as I get new stamps, they will go into this drawer, and then once I have finished cataloging these, I will move these into my actual organization system, and then I will label all of the new ones in the drawer, stick them up here, and work them into my system. And that is going to be the continued kind of flow of new stamps coming into my craft space. Thank you guys so much for being here. If you have any questions or comments, please leave them down below. And as always, I hope to see you guys all in the next one. Thanks. Bye.